So how do you toot your horn? When I was a child and I was brought up, I was told, don't ever toot your horn. That is the most egotistical thing you could ever do. When you toot your horn, you're telling the people that you think you're better than them. But you see, there's a difference in what it means to toot your horn. So many times we think it's about talking about from where we are. It's about a title that we've given ourselves. It's about an image that we've created for ourselves. In the corporate world, I was a vice president. And I would tell people, what do you do? Well, I'm a vice president. What did that mean? I was tooting my horn. When I would say something, oh, I was dating so-and-so in high school. What was I doing? I was tooting my horn. Why? Because I was proud. When I had my children, oh, I'm a daddy. I was tooting my horn. But you see, I was tooting my horn from the standpoint of an effect, from an outcome. I wasn't tooting my horn from who I was. You see, when we get into this idea of what does it really mean to toot our own horn, it means first we have to know who we are. When we know who we are, we then just speak our word, and our word creates. So let's break this down and let's look at this from the standpoint of a musical instrument. Okay, we have the horn. Can you see the horn? Can you imagine the horn? Or look over there and you'll see the horn. It's there. It doesn't care who picks it up. It doesn't care who toots in it. That sounds good. Who toots in it? But anyway, who toots in it? But here's what it does. Here's what happens with the horn. The first thing is when Mike gets up there and he picks up that instrument, what's the first thing that happens? He has a thought. That thought then vibrates through him and comes out through the breath. And with the breath goes into the horn, and while it's in the horn, there are fingers moving, right? And what comes out? A sound. Now, depending on what his thought is, will determine the type of sound. Depending on how long he has practiced, how long he has been in a groove, how long he's rehearsed, how much pizzazz he's got in himself, will determine the quality of that sound. But it all comes back to one thing. It comes back to what was in his mind, in his thought, what was the burning desire. And from that burning desire, then comes the breath, which is speaking it out. And as he speaks it out, it goes into the trombone, trumpet, clarinet, any one of those musical instruments, and it comes out into the world in a song. And you see, that's exactly the same power that we have. Except the trumpet or the instrument is the law, it is the wisdom, it is the oneness with God. So when we're tooting our own horn, what we're doing is the horn is the power that is within us, and the tooting of it is taking our consciousness and creating directly from it. In other words, we are embracing a power that has always existed within us, and we're saying we're not going to... See, if we identify with our title, whether it's a mother, a father, a director, a manager, a musician, whatever you want to create as a title, we're playing really small. How small is it that we're playing? Really small. Because if we come from a title, what have we done? We have limited ourselves, because here's what. That saxophone can play anything. It is beyond limits what can be played out of it. We hear blues, we hear jazz, we hear rock, we hear classical and all other types of music, but there's music that has not even yet been discovered. You see, that instrument is capable of everything and anything that the imagination can possibly create. Now, if that's an instrument, think about the power that is the divine that has always been within you. What can that create? Anything you can imagine. But not just imagine, anything that you are willing to commit your life to. You see, these gentlemen, these musicians here, did not get to be who they are today by picking it up and taking a lesson once a week. There had to be something within them that was a burning desire that said, my soul, my inner being loves this more than anything. And they dedicated their lives to that performance, to creating what? Creating music. What is music? It is a vibration. What is life? It is a vibration. So the question I ask, what music are we creating in our lives today? What music would we like to see changed in our lives? And if we want to see that music changed in our lives, then we must tweak our thoughts. We must tweak our breath. We must tweak our movement. And in that, as we continue to practice it, as we dance with it, you see, that's where we get caught up. We forget that life is a dance. It is not hard. It is not, see, when there's something so much in you, you can't wait to do it. We had a quick start class at my home yesterday, and we were talking about the idea of using the mala beads and using affirmations. And as we were doing it, someone said, well, I'm really sort of bored with it. And the question came immediately to me, then is it not what you're saying an affirmation for? Not a higher vibration? It's not what you want? Because if you truly want something, if you want something more than anything, will you commit to doing everything and anything to get it? Yes. The problem is we've stopped dreaming. We're playing the same as when I was 13, I was given lessons to play the accordion. Now, when I was growing up, where I was growing up, I was not in the Polish ghetto that my father was brought up in. I was not in the Italian ghetto where my mother was brought up in. Now, if I had been in those areas of living and played the accordion, I would be like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Because to play the polka or Italian music, I mean, the women there they just shook it. And they would be attracted. But where I grew up, that was not taboo. But I remember that my father, I did not want to play anymore. But my father said to me, I will let you stop taking lessons when you can play me this polka. And so by God, there was my motivation. I didn't want to play the instrument, but by God, I'm going to practice it. And I practiced it for a month and a half. And my dad was a fireman. And so he worked 24 hours on, and then he was off 24 hours, and he had his own business on the side. And I remember the day that he came home from the fire department. It was 7:30 in the morning before I had to go off to school. And I said, Dad, sit down. And he sat down, and I went through, and I played the polka as well as I probably could have after 6 months of lessons. And he looked at me and said, so you're done playing the accordion? I said, yes, I am done. In hindsight, that may have not been the best decision. I'd never developed my musical talent afterwards. But you see, I had a motivation to do something I didn't want to do. So remember, the instrument will do whatever you want it to do. So what is going on in your life right now? Is it at work? Is it in your health? Is it in your relationships? Is it in your demonstration of abundance? Is it in how you see yourself and self-love yourself? The question then you've got to ask is, what can I do that would juice me in that area that would cause me to be uplifted? We were talking about dating yesterday. We're talking about how in the dating world, it's really easy to pick up a trend. We have a trend of men, or we have a trend of women, and the trend is always the same, it seems like. Did you ever hear that before? You hear that all the time. Well, you know, I left my first husband, married my second husband, and guess what? He was just like my first husband. Or I've been on a string of dates, and guess what? It's the same thing. The problem is not the men, or it's not the women. It's what you're blowing into the trumpet. What you're blowing into the trumpet is coming from where? Your thoughts. So it's the same old thoughts causing the blow into the trumpet with the same type of notes in the same rhythm. What are you going to get? The same old song. That's a song, isn't it? That same old song. You see, and we become numb to that. And what I've really gotten, I'm going to share with you. So I went this Tuesday, and I went to my friend Anna, who's a quantum hypnotist. And in that, I went into her, and I was hypnotized, and I went into a very, very deep state of hypnosis. And in it, I did a past life regression and all of that, but that wasn't the fun part. The fun part was I gave Anna a list of questions. And I said, I want to tap into my highest mind in the state of hypnosis without my ego getting in the way and tapping into that wisdom. And I had a specific question. I asked the question, how can I be in oneness all the time? How can I be in oneness all the time and experience it? And the answer came back as clear as anything I've ever heard. And you've heard me say it. But you see, I may say some things, and yet I haven't embodied them. Because there's a process, what? There's a process of embodiment. That's the practice. That's the work. That's where you do it on your own. It's the idea that you have to embody it. You may know what to do. You may think you've got the right answer, but have you embodied it? And the chances are, it's not chances, the fact is, if it's not in your life, you have not embodied it. So stop fooling yourselves. Stop trying to defend yourself. If you're with someone and you're defending yourself, saying, I've got this in my life, but you can't see it, but I know it's there, that's BS. Because if you've got it, the trumpet has to play the note in the rhythm that you want. It has to be there. It is the law. It never changes. What did Jesus say? He said it so clearly. It is done unto you as you believe. It is always your belief. So when we go back to that, we realize that the only thing we have to change is not the men in our life, not the women in our life, not the job in our life, not the home in our life, not a new musical instrument. It is the thought and the belief behind it. And when we have that new belief, what happens? We send out a tone, a vibration, an energy, and what comes to us? Exactly what we're sending out. So if there's anything in your life that you are not seeing, and if you're worrying about something, the more you worry about it, what is the vibration? You're worrying, and what are you going to get more of? Whatever you're worrying about. Why? Because that's the trumpet, that's the note that you've chosen to play. I've been called Pollyanna Lee. Because Pollyanna Lee doesn't talk about the things that really tick him off. And I'm learning that. So I'm going back to Anna, my hypnotist. And in it, the answer that came to me, and it's an answer I've heard 1,000 times. It goes back to Walter Starkey's book, This Double Thread. It goes back to the idea of every great spiritual teacher has said this. It's about living in balance. Here's the thing. Balance knowing oneness, balance knowing humanness and the power that we create. It's living in that balance, and guess what? We're never there long. We move back and forth because that's the human experience. You see, the human experience is not to stay in divine oneness all the time, because then there's no purpose in being in human form. The purpose to being in human form is to have contrast to create from, because we were born to create more and more and more. There is no limit to the music we can create. There's no limit to the life we can live. There's no limit to the joy we can experience, the love we can give, the love we can receive, the money that we can call in, if that's what we choose. And remember, money is nothing but energy. Can you see the energy coming to you because of what you're offering out? When people come to me and they say, I want more money, I'm saying, what do you do at your job? And they go into their job and they do what they have to do. Well, if you go into your job and you do what you have to do, you're only going to get what they have to give you. Can you follow that? But if you go into your job and you're giving from your heart, you're going to be getting more. Maybe not in that job, but because you're giving more, you will attract a different job that will give you that, because you become the vibration, you become the person. You are tooting your horn to a different melody, and only the audience that can hear that melody can come and be with you. Whoa, That's a lot of words. Did you feel that? That's the same thing in a relationship. I was talking a while back with someone who was wanting to discuss how to make their marriage better. And so we were having a discussion. And in that discussion, we were looking at each other. And there were eyes. You know how you are when you're really engaged? The eyes are really connected. There's a full connection there. And so there's this table. We're across the table at a restaurant. We're having this conversation. And she is grossly intent into my eyes. She is fully present. And I asked this question. When you look at your husband, are you looking at him with the same eyes as you're looking at me? And the answer was no. And I said, why wouldn't you be looking at the person that you've committed your life to with the same love, with the same intensity that you're looking at a perfect stranger? You see, we've gotten numb. We get into a relationship, we get into a job, we get into a health program, and we become numb to being fully present. Being fully present means being engaged in that moment. That means thinking the thoughts, blowing out the air, playing the fingers, and hearing the melody. And if the melody's not right, we go back and we start with a new thought. One of my favorite affirmations now is, I release everything and anything that no longer serves my highest awareness. And I said that to several people, and one of the people came back to me and said, well, that scares the hell out of me. I said, good. They said, well, I might have to leave my husband, or I might have to leave this, or I might have to leave that. I said, good. I said, because it's not serving your highest awareness, it's not right for you. Do you understand? Because that's what you're here to do, is to find that highest awareness, that highest dream. To dream the impossible dream, and then to create it through the thoughts, followed by the actions with the words. You see, I've been saying this a lot recently. We think we've got it because we're speaking it or we're thinking it. But it's not that. There has to be an alignment of thought with word, with action. And it has to be consistent. When those three things are aligned in a consistent behavior, we are tooting a melody that has to be changing to the point where the vibration keeps becoming. And once it becomes the vibration of what we want, it's in our lives, and we don't even realize it because we've already become that which it's a match to. You ever hear that? That the person that you're looking for will show up when you become the person that would be with them. And they just show up. It's the same thing with a job. When you become a match to a vibration of what you want to do and how you want to create, that job will come to you. Yes, there's work. It's thinking about it. It's putting out your resumes. It's being there. But when you're authentic, this is real key. When we learn how to toot our own horn, the only way that we truly create and feel a sense of self-love is when we are authentically us. When we stop trying to be someone else, and we stop trying to please someone else, we stop trying to appease our parents, our children, our grandparents, our boss, our church, our politics, our neighborhood. That's not what we're about. We are here to be authentic. And guess what? As the individualization of God, that's all you were ever meant to be. Why would God create two of anything? So those of you who have children, when your teachers want your children to be just like every other kid, and your kids are getting in trouble for it, you go, yes. Come on, teacher, call me in for a parent council. Call me in. You see, we try to box these beautiful expressions of God in instead of letting them freely exchange. You see, remember I talked about tooting your own horn, and I talked about labels at the beginning? Society, the consciousness around us, will take a label, and they'll use that label to label people and make them into a box like ADD, HDAD. They will find these labels, and what does it mean? It just means a person who is expressing differently than what the rules of whatever they're in is trying to get them to express as. So we've got an autistic child Think about an autistic child. There's nothing wrong with that child. That child is expressing in the most perfect way as itself. It is as more love than you and I can imagine. That child is feeling in every moment, and yet we put a label on it. No. Get rid of labels. You're not men and women. You're metrosexual. You didn't get that, did you? That was a joke. I was trying to fit some humor in there. I was called that in ministerial school. I was saying they had to change my dress, so they brought in this consultant to change how we looked, the colors we wore, and all that type of thing. And I tend to be, as you can see, I've got my own style, but I'm a pretty conservative dresser. Well, they had me get into some of these newfangled shoes with these shirts that were just so, and I put it on, and they looked at me and they said, "You've become metrosexual." And I said, "Is that going to improve my sex life?" And they said, "Well, no." I said, "Well, the hell with that." You see what I was doing? I was trying to please them. I was trying to play their melody, not my melody. Does that make sense? That's the whole purpose of the story. They were trying to put me into a mold to be something other than who I am. So this is who I am right now. Some days I'll have my India shirt on. When I'm at home, I dress very differently, but I'm always going to be authentically Lee. And what I'm going to challenge you to do this week is for you to be authentically yourself. It may mean you can just take a little bit of step because it could be a difficult move. It may mean you take 2 steps, but I'm going to ask you to take a step. You see, when we become aware that we are the mind within the infinite mind, we now know our power. And when we know our power, we will think a new thought, we will blow a new note, we will move our fingers in the proper fashion, and we will create a melody of love that is unique to who we are. And when we create that melody of love, we will be in a perfect state of balance between the divine and between who we are. The child, the expression, the perfection of the infinite on planet Earth today, 2013, September 29th. You are perfect, just as you are. And go forth from that knowledge and just be you. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.